Did you guys enjoy that dance? Should we do another one? Yeah. No? No more dancing? All right. Well, so actually, I love skiing, by the way, and now I'm in Austria, and I cannot go skiing. It's frustrating. But I do ski a lot. When I do get a chance, I go up skiing. I live in California, which sounds like, oh, well, that's sunny, it's beaches. Yes, we have that. But we also have pretty decent mountains, too. And obviously, we have a decent US ski team. Yes, of course. And I am obviously pushing my kids actively to go in after skiing and downhill skiing. So I have daughters doing racing. So that's my passion. Apart from that, also extremely passionate about technology in general, as we just heard. I've had the fortune to live through a couple of, I would say, generations of development. I've lived through the almost the punch card era, almost. But you know, most of the technology that happened during the 80s, 90s, and then now in the 2000s. So I've seen a lot of fun stuff, and had my fortune and opportunity to also take part in an interesting project that eventually came out as the HTML5 WebSocket standard, which is, I assume some of you have heard of it, because it's now 10 years ago, so I assume people have heard of that, especially if you're in the web space. Now, today, and right now, we're going to talk about IBM. We're going to talk about developer and the impact developers have on the world, and also, you know, what we do at IBM, and you know, how we look at this space. And I think, as many of you that are here today at this conference, it's obviously what this is all about. We are developers, right? So even though I have a question mark here, you know, what are we really, right? You know, if you go back 20 years and you talk to someone about, you know, what are developers, right? In the past, it was fairly easy to, at least people thought it was easy to identify a developer. They would sit in a cubicle with tons of cans of Coke and some other scraps around them, and that was it, locked into a closet. That was sort of the mental picture people had of developers, right? Now, that's changed, obviously, quite tremendously, right? So if we're looking at today's environments with developers, we're in control. I remember when I was a lot younger than I am today, when my manager came in and said to me, Jonas, I need you to implement this database. And they, boom, and I got like a stack of books. This was before we had Google, so that we could easily search for information. It would take us, like, today it takes us seconds to find out. It took me hours to plow through that book, and then to sit down and, you know, oh, no, download a database. Oh, here are all the CDs. You got a stack, right? And then you sit there and you're just shoveling DVDs into your server. That was fun. But anyway, so a lot has changed. And I think this is where you see companies like us, like IBM, you know, we're embarking on new journeys. We're embarking on new innovations. We are rediscovering ourselves in large part too, right? And people have probably followed, you probably have followed the news about, you know, what's going on in the industry. So anyone here not heard of cloud computing? See, I knew it. Everybody heard about it. So the industry has changed, and sometimes people forget about it. Like, we just take it as for granted and we move on. And we don't really look back, and we look at these organizations like IBM and others that have been in this industry for a long time. You know, what are they doing? You know, what's the purpose? What, you know, I'm a developer. I'm jumping on to the next most exciting thing, and I don't really look back and contemplate, you know, who are the players in this industry. But ultimately, I think for us, we're discovering that developers are key in moving the industry forward. And why is that? Why suddenly has a shift happened? And people go, it's not sudden, by the way. This has been ongoing for the past, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years, right? Because when I joined, it was very much like top down. your VP, or CTO made a decision, we're going to buy enterprise system X. And here's the Bible. Read it. Implement it by Monday. Right? And then we sat there and just plowing through the books. Right? Now, over the years, a lot of things happened. But I think these three things are the things that I think changed the market the most, right? Open source. Today, we take open source for granted. 15, 20 years ago, that was not the case. Open source was this thing that was, a nuisance to enterprise companies to some degree. Some companies like IBM embraced it fully early on and helped create foundations like Linux Foundation, Apache Foundation, writing licenses like the Apache 2 license, for example. So IBM has always been a supporter of this open source ecosystem. But that's one piece that started shifting the power from senior levels down to us developers, right? The other one that happened came along a lot later, which is the accessibility to compute. With cloud computing, suddenly we as developers had the opportunity to take our laptop, walk down to the coffee shop, hook up to the internet, and actually without too much fuss, we could get access to the same compute power that a large company in the past would have to buy and provision and give you permission to access. Now without actually, and many of us take that for granted, but for those of you who've been around the block, I remember it was a pain to get access to enough compute power to even try my algorithms or try to scale my solution. Today, that's not a problem. So suddenly, we made the barrier to entry, barrier to usage of these computers a lot easier and cheaper. Okay, so now we moved even more power to the hands of us in this room, developers, right? And with that, with the move to a more as-a-service-oriented system, where we offer up technology either as an infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, God knows what else as a service, right? Now we can get everything on utility. We just sign up and we can buy whatever we want or use whatever we want, right? That move has also shifted the market, right? So if we're looking at traditional technology companies from the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, a lot of the business was done business to business, right? We sold into our clients, and we talked to the senior leadership to make sure that we had an agreement, here's the business value. But under the surface, all these other things were going on, open source, cloud computing, so forth, right? So the shift of who's making what decision was moving away from the top brass inside those accounts, right? That's an important piece, right? So if you're looking at the market today, especially the technology market, whether it's a startup or a large company like IBM, a lot of what we're looking at is more of a business-to-consumer behavior. Not necessarily that's how we sell it, but if you're looking at the behavior of the industry, we went from business to consumer-oriented ways to buy technology or use and consume technology, right? So those are the three shifts in the industry that points squarely to us as developers, right? So then the question is, and I think this is where, if you're looking at enterprise companies or larger companies that are selling software technology to their clients, this is where they're discovering, right? There was an article that one of my colleagues pointed to me just before I came up on stage. They were saying there's a developer advocacy war going on. And I go, what? What do you mean? There's no war going on, right? But I think the sentiment of that article was essentially a reflection of what you guys are seeing here, right? You guys are increasingly empowered to make decisions on what technology to be used inside your company that you're working in, right? So the question is, how influential are you, right? Some people don't want to be involved, some people will. And most people, if we look at some of the surveys that we did, Because we're a large company, right? IBM is one of the largest technology companies on the planet, right? Some of you may only have heard of us as a logo, so hopefully I'll may be able to change that today. We've been around for a while. But, we also, even though we have a long history as an engineering company, a developer company, selling software solutions, building cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and so forth, even us as a company, we are going through a massive transformation as a company today. And it's an ongoing process. It's not stopping. Like, IBM has continually evolved as a company from its initial stage. But this, essentially, is what you see on this slide, right? Here's the shift, right? There are a lot of developers today in the world that are making buying decisions. Now, it can be a little bit different between the different cultures, right? So if you're looking at certain regions, like if you go to Asia Pacific, for example, it might be a little bit less. If you go to North America, Europe, it's a lot higher, and so forth. So it can vary a little bit, right? But the influence and the decision-making power is now in the hands of you guys, right? And that's important to know as a company, right? And IBM reflected on this actually quite a while back. So this is not news to us, and we've been working very diligently towards that goal. But a couple of things that we talked about, and a couple of things that we discussed last year, or about a year ago, it's a little bit over a year now, was, okay, so how much do we push? How much do we engage in this? We have a lot of developers in-house. We do a lot of business, obviously, as a large company. But, we started producing client case studies, like actual clients telling us, hey, we want you guys to actually engage with our developers, because they are the guys making our decisions. It was very clear message to our senior leadership inside IBM that, no, we want you guys to come and also interact with our developers. We don't mind buying your stuff, but we want you to make sure that you talk to our developers too, right? We did both looked at external research, we looked at internal research, obviously, to get data to back up how do we invest, what do we do, what should be our focus if we start to really build out an organization to address this, right? And then we leveraged this book. It was good. This is a good book, actually. It's a bit outdated in terms of years, but it makes some valid points about the value of developers to a business. So this is really not for us as developers. This is a book for people that are not developers that might still scratch their head like, what are you doing? It's like when you talk to your grandparents, right? And they say, what are you actually doing? Well, I'm writing code, Mom. I'm doing this and this. And huh? What is Twitter? They might know Facebook today, but that's what this book is about, right? So if you have issues with your company and you want to sort of help usher in a more developer-centric culture in your company, this is actually a pretty good book to do that. Anyway, so we got full buy-in all the way up to the top with our CEO to go after and establish a proper developer relationship organization, right? It wasn't like IBM hadn't done that in the past, but now we've formalized it in a bit. And so this was part of what we did, basically. We said, okay, what do we want to do? What would be the mission for the company? Well, first off, I think from my perspective and my team's perspective, and anyone involved in this, is that people that are part of a developer relationship engagement model need to genuinely care about this, care about you guys, right? I think that's the most important part of this, right? I think the other part of it is not to be shy about talking about what we actually have in-house. Look, I know I hate people that try to sell me stuff, right? Absolutely hate it. I had my own company, and people called me up and tried to sell me technology. It was the worst thing I could ever experience, right? But however, when they talk to my teams about solving pretty hard problems, I had no problems getting involved in that technology or in that product, right? It's all about addressing problems and providing solutions to those problems, right? At least from my perspective. So we have a pretty good, strong team today, and the focus is this. My team, this is what I'm telling them to do. What can you do to help developers achieve their goals? This is not about IBM. It's not about us. It's about you. It's all about you. What can we do to help you be successful? That's the most important part for our mission. Right? How can we make you successful in what you need to accomplish? It sounds really simple, doesn't it? Right? But you have to consider this. If you're working for a large company like IBM, we have other obligations too. We care about developers. We care about technology. We have clients that have, they have SLAs that they need to comply with, whether that is for credit card transactions, hospitals, transportation, logistics, and so forth. We also have investor shareholders that we have to care for, right? But this is really important for us as a developer relationship team. This is what we want to focus on. So one thing that we did consider, and I've seen this in other organizations where they get it wrong, and I think you guys can empathize with me on that. If you really want to talk to someone about a problem, you want that person to understand your problem, right? You don't want to talk to someone that is more of a marketing salesperson, correct? You want to talk to someone that has experienced your challenge, right? Or someone that worked on the technology that you're trying to use, right? So in our perspective, and how we structured our organization was all about getting people that were developers themselves, right? Partially because we wanted to get the trust internally, but also externally. We wanted to make sure that when you meet with developer advocates from IBM, you actually meet developers, right? They are project leads on open source projects. They work on products or technology inside of IBM. But that's really critical for you and for us, that when you meet someone that you believe that they can do your job, right? 50% of their time roughly is spent on writing code on an average base. Right? A few other things that we did. This is all about what we did, right? Engagement strategy. People can talk about that. Well, we can go down the marketing side, or we can go down the sales side. And we decided that, no, we want to go down the straight line, developer-focused, what matters to developers. Well, first off, code. If I can get access to code, open source code, that can help me solve problems, great, go for it. So all our samples, everything that we write is all in open source. It's on GitHub. You can download and you can use it for free. If it solves your problems, great. Obviously, community is important. We do a lot to engage the community, whether it's in meetups and other things. We also run a conference separately from this that is also focused on community, very much community-focused. And the culture in general is that we're a bunch of developers, right? And I think when you look at that and think, okay, why would we care about this? And this is just a reference to our code website, but one of the things that I think a lot of people forget, right, and is how important this is to IBM, right, and how we care, right? Yes, Linux Foundation. Yes, Apache Foundation. Yes, Eclipse for those who remember Java days, right? Yes, we were there. We did all that work, right? But if you start looking further, we have been involved in every open source foundation created since then, more or less. But we don't talk about it a lot, right? We're not the flamboyant guys walking out on stage and say, oh, look at our stuff, we're so, feel my muscles, right? That's not us, right? This is my experience with IBM, and I've been here about 2.5 years. It's an extremely humble organization. They don't like to brag about their achievements, which I personally appreciate. It makes my conversations with my peers and my engineering teams and my developer advocates a lot easier, right? But if you're looking at it in general, we have invested a lot into this. We have about 78,000 developers inside IBM that have certified that they can work on open source projects. 78,000 people certified to work on open source. We're contributing on average to about 6,500 open source projects worldwide. 6,500. I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? But these are small projects or large projects. The most recent ones that we contributed to, or actually donated, is J9. How many heard of J9, the new JVM? Oh, a couple, right? So yeah, we actually did that with the Eclipse Foundation. We have a new other Java libraries for microservices, running microservices, called Open Liberty. It's another open source project that we donated to. Hyperledgers, blockchain. Anyone heard about blockchain? God, you guys are hot, right? But we've done other things. Fabric, we have another something called Fabric for deep learning, which is an open source project about how utilizing deep learning and running it on a Kubernetes cluster, for example. We do quantum computing. Did you know that? That's pretty cool. We have a software kit for people that would like to try out quantum computing. So we do a lot around open source. This is our primary thing. People forget that. A lot of other people take credit and they talk about how great they did one project, and we go, yeah, right. We've done a whole lot more than that. Besides that then, though, Jonas, so if you look at, if you're looking at what we do as a company, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about us and the future. Because some people think, well, IBM, it's that big company, no one really, I don't know what they're doing. Right, so let me see if I can change that. Okay, first off. Secondly, this is my mantra. This is what I live by. Whether this is me holding on to stuff in my garage, right? I know if I hold on to stuff for too long, I can actually not move forward. Whether that is with my job, my house, whatever it is, right? In order for us as teams, companies, individuals, to really realize our full potential, we have to let go of the past. I see a lot of people, especially in our industry, that we tend to, we learn something, right? Say that we learn a technology, and I was part of a group that worked on an application server. I'm not going to mention the name, but, and when me and my partner came up with this new WebSocket standard, I'll take that as an example, we designed that standard to be very different and to be used very differently to traditional technology. But people have a hard time to let go. So what people try to do with that standard initially was basically they took what they knew and tried to force it into the new thing. Right? Rather than thinking, oh, this is good, I knew that one, I'm just going to put that to the side and I'm going to focus on the new thing and learn new concept on how I can actually use a new type of architecture. Right? So what I've seen over the years that we tend to, even in knowledge, as soon as we see something new, we try to figure out how it fits into our current knowledge, rather than moving forward to new types of architectures that we can understand, right? And I think that's something that it's important for us as developers, is that we need to realize that when something new comes out, we might have to drop what we know. Because otherwise, the old stuff is going to hold us back. We're not going to realize the potential of what's coming, right? So, okay, did you guys know that IBM was this old? Well, so the name IBM came around in about 1924. That was when they actually picked it up. But the first iterations of this company was actually a couple of companies that eventually merged into one. So if you look back, like 1888, can you imagine a tech company today that is actually, that old? Right? And some of the things that IBM produced, for those who don't know, was meat slicers, slice meat, right? That's fun. I didn't know that. That's cool. Slicing bacon. That's what we did. Now, that evolved, obviously, pretty quickly, and the company turned into something called Computing Tabular Recording Company that did punch cards. How many people heard about punch cards? Punch cards was created by IBM and pretty much ruled the computing industry for about 80 years. God bless us, 80 years. So IBM has a very long history of innovation in general, and sometimes we don't talk about it, sometimes we do. But I think it's important to recognize that as a company, we evolve pretty quickly. My own personal experience with IBM are these three things. This is what I lived through. with IBM. You know, it was the DB2, it was WebSphere, it was big books, and a ThinkPad laptop that I worked off, and I carried it around like, I thought it was super easy to carry around, but, compared to today, it's not much, right? But this is what I grew up with, and an industry that was very much B2B, right? Business-focused. Now, that's what maybe some of you still think of IBM. Now, we still sell those products, obviously. But as with most companies, we're also squarely and dedicated on cloud computing. And cloud computing is more than just more technology. As many of the more established companies are realizing, like IBM, it requires transformation, not just on the technology side, but also culturally in the company. Now we're moving from B2B to B2C as a company, right? We have an increase of open source on the cloud computing side. There's a price warfare going on. Prices are going down. And for us, it's all about what makes us different. How can we differentiate ourselves in that space? But cloud computing, obviously, is one of the important milestones for this. IoT is another one, another market segment that is important to IBM, but something that we're working on. And from a developer perspective, maybe a little bit more, I don't know, is this something that I should care about? But, it has its fun stuff. This is, for those of you who have, this is actually a connected hairbrush, smart hairbrush. It won the award of CES last year. I don't have the most recent year, unfortunately, but this is like last year's winner. IoT, smart hairbrush, if you didn't know that. But this is also an industry that is evolving pretty quickly, and today we talk about smart house, smart homes, smart cities, home automation, and other things that are evolving into that market, and then we're jumping into other things, right? Connected vehicles, IBM is obviously, as a technology company that you may not be aware of, we're working quite closely with a lot of these manufacturers on connected cars. And if you're looking at innovation in general, a lot of innovation is occurring here. I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you, in Silicon Valley, if you do not get run over by a fully autonomous car, you're not in Silicon Valley. I'll tell you that. They're crawling all over the place. It's the Ubers, it's the Lyfts, it's the Googles, it's the Microsofts, and then there are some other ones that doesn't have labels on them, and they're all over the place. So connected vehicles is really not just a hardware technology solution. It is a developer problem, right? We as developers, we are building these systems, right? Again, coming back to how important we are, our roles in the industry, our roles in the business, our role in people's lives are critical, right? It's one thing to write a website. The website is not going to bite you. It's not going to hit you. But this autonomous car may, Be careful, And then we get into those philosophical spaces like, okay, so I'm driving down and there's someone walking across the street and the car has to hit the brakes, maybe divert. Is it going to go left or right? Is it going to go to the oncoming traffic, or is it going to hit the people on the sidewalk? We get into those decisions that now we're letting a computer decide. Maybe it decides that it's better to kill the passengers or kill the people on the sidewalk. Now, that's pushing it a little bit, but ultimately, this is an industry that is evolving pretty rapidly, that IBM is very much involved with. Anyone seen this one? I'm just trying to emphasize, this is cool stuff. We're working on some fun stuff at IBM. We're crazy. People don't know that. This is Ollie. This is a fully autonomous bus that talks back. It's not like you just walk in and it drives around and like, no, you can actually jump on board and you can have a conversation with it. That's pretty cool. You can have a conversation with the bus, not the bus driver, the bus. Right? And not only that, the bus is 3D printed. Now we're talking transformation. As a company, collectively, IBM, people talk about R&D, and everybody goes, yeah, I'm working in the R&D department, right? Well, IBM takes this serious. We have R and we have D. We have research departments, right? Other companies may have R and D, like mixed in together. But we have actual research departments, right? And they are investigating things around how do we transform not just our industry, but other industries too. So we collaborate with companies that do things like this. 3D printing cars. We provide the technology to run them, with autonomous technology, for example, AI and other things, right? And then we have this. Oh, I love this. You don't know that, right? That's my former governor. Arnold, the governor, the governator, as he was called. He's going to change the world. Yeah, anyway. But the important part with this is that if you look at, we should be cautious. I'll give Elon Musk and a few others, I'll give them that we shouldn't just go bullheading down the street and build AIs that then eventually run rogue, right? That would be crazy. But I think we're quite far away from that scenario. Now, there are obviously companies that are trying to get to places where we can have an interaction with an artificial intelligence, of course. But I think, from that picture to something that we can see and touch, probably going to take a while. But I think if you're looking at what we're doing, what we're trying to do here at IBM, and the stuff that we're working on at IBM, it's more about cognitive computing systems. So instead of just talking about artificial intelligence, what we want to do is to build systems that we can actually interact with, naturally interact with, right? And that doesn't mean to be a robot that walks around with machine guns, right? It can be a bus, right? It can be a taxi, it can be the elevator, So instead of actually having to, and there's some funny skits about the elevator and two Scottish guys in an elevator trying to talk to an elevator in English. That's not funny. But that's not the point, right? The point here is that, if we can build systems that can learn by themselves, that they can pick up things, and that they can interact with us in a natural way, meaning that I can actually walk into an elevator and say, hey, take me to 5th floor. That would be nice, right? We can always argue, why not just push the button, right? That's, okay then. But it's much cooler if I can talk to it. But there are places where, these kind of systems would be extremely valuable, right? Whether that is in healthcare, where you want to be able to communicate with something, or just, someone on the phone. Have you guys tried to call your telcos and try to get through the system? And they're like, oh, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, and then they go on to like 14. And you sit there and like, oh, which one should I press? I'll press this one. And that's like, and then you go around that system and you can't still find it, and then eventually come back. Well, wouldn't it be nice if they had something like this? An actual cognitive system that could learn and can actually reason a little bit with some purpose, so that when you actually ask them a question, they would get you to the right place. That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? So there's a lot of stuff that we can do with artificial intelligence, but in first and foremost, cognitive computing, that would make our lives a lot easier. This is one example of that. I'm not going to list a lot of examples, but legal case, right? A cognitive system will not do the case for you, right? But what it can do the research. So instead of you sitting through 256 cases to walk through, you can actually let the computer do it and give you a synopsis of what those cases were, right? That's pretty efficient, right? So I think the point here with these things is that when we build these cognitive systems, it's not there to replace us, and a lot of people are concerned about that. But I think the more important facts of this, and this is actually one of our lead researchers at IBM, these systems are not here to replace us. They're not here to do our jobs. They're here so that we can actually think better, give us more data, better informed data, so that we can have better outcomes when we produce whatever we want to do. That's what cognitive systems is all about, right? Giving us better tools, not to replace us. And I know people get concerned about that, but these are things that we worry about at IBM, right? Other things, That's cool. Yeah, okay. IBM is, okay, we recognize it. You guys are bleeding edge. Let's push this a little bit further. Oh, we've heard about Watson. Yeah. Talk about that. Cognitive computing, not systems, computing. So this is something that the researchers at IBM has been working on for quite some time. So this is, in its essence, when you have research like this, it's not new. For them, it would be like, oh, yeah, we worked on that for decades or whatever. But for us, it's not until we start seeing things and you can actually start touching it, or you can actually start, getting engaged in a form of usage, right? You can get involved with the project that uses technology like this, that it becomes real to us, right? But these Neurosynaptic chips, that's TrueNorth is the code name for it, but it's something that IBM has been working on for quite some time. And it's essentially how would I call it? A chip that from an architecture is changing how we look at compute in general for chips, for how computer chips are set up, right? The entire concept is that it's emulating or trying to copy how a brain works. And that sounds a little bit scary. It's going to replace us? No. I mean, the brain is so far an extremely sophisticated piece of equipment that we have up here. But if we can make these chips simulate or emulate how a brain works, there are a lot of benefits with it. For example, a chip today, the architecture that we have today, is always on, right? So if you have a computer on it, it's going to go all the time. It's on a clock, right? It goes all the time. With these chips, when we do come out with them, is that they will be event-driven. So meaning that they will only do something when they're asked to do something, which means that they can save energy, they can save consumption, right? The other part of this is that they're also working in a distributed and parallel way. So that means that you can have multiple cores working in parallel. So they're not going to block each other as they process data. So they're going to be a lot more efficient in how they deal with compute. They also have, and one of the other benefits is that they do integrate memory and compute and communication. So each core in itself has built-in communication capability so that it can communicate with each other. Which means that if one core fails, it will work like a brain. The computer itself will still continue to operate. Maybe less efficiently, but it will still operate. So instead of having a chip that one part fails and everything goes bust, this would actually allow the chip itself to continue to operate even though one core is failing, right? The part of this that is interesting for me as a developer is where can I apply this, right? Well, it's going to lose a lot less power. That's good, and it's also going to be able to provide the compute I need. So, in scenarios where I have things that are, where I don't have place for a battery, for example, or not. So that could be for glasses, medical care, medical instruments, places where computers could change what we do, but I don't have space because like most stuff is like this big, right? But if I can get something that is really small and energy efficient, I can embed it everywhere. I can embed it into my clothes. I can track packages. I can put it in an envelope. It doesn't need to be a big fat sticker, right? So there are a lot of places where hopefully this type of chip that we are working on at IBM will revolutionize an industry, right? And hopefully that will give us as developers a lot more tools that we can play with as we work through our innovation, right? And what happens then, right? So now you combine that with this. We announced this in February. In February. The world's smallest computer. This is a 64 motherboards. This is a motherboard that you're seeing on the finger. That's a motherboard. The motherboard has 2 computers on it. And you don't see that, but if you take a little bit, if you look at that big square on the left, sort of most left corner, upper left, you see a little yellow thing. That's the computer itself. So if you take that computer off and you throw it in among salt, this is salt on the right side, that little dot is the actual computer. Now, that computer has the power of an x86. Well, x86, come on. That was a long time ago. But give us a little bit of time. What if we can morph that size into neurosynaptic chipsets? Now we're getting somewhere. What do you think you can do with that? What do you think you can do with that size computer that you have there? You can do a lot. You can even eat it. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt you. Like, it's smaller than the salt grains. How hard can it be, right? Cool thing with these computers. What does a computer have? It's got an I/O port. It communicates, right? That's what a computer does. Shit. Fuck, I can communicate with that thing. Isn't that cool? Now I can, now it's just basically up to us as developers to figure out, all right, if I now have access to that thing, what can I do with it? Right? I could think of a few things. I could put it into lipstick. Huh? Why? Well, just think about it. We have these. Have you seen those glass walls? When you turn on you turn on a little bit of power, they go sort of dim out. Have you seen those? Right? I don't know. Maybe it would be feasible to do a lip gloss that changes color with your phone. I don't know. Just let your imagination go wild for a little while, right? But these are the things that we work on at IBM, right? We're extremely developer-focused company. We have been, always will be, right? And we sometimes lose sight of the fact that, yes, we are a large enterprise company. We have obligations to our shareholders, obviously, and we have to obviously turn a profit. I mean, there's no one hiding that. I don't think anyone in here would pretend otherwise either, right? But I think what we forget sometimes is that we are spending a lot of time and research on new stuff. And I think it's time for us as an organization and as a developer organization to start sharing some of the ideas and the concepts that we are working on that will change the way we look at our world of compute. This is on the small side, right? This is like tiny little computers that we can utilize, right? But how about this stuff? Oh, that old company, IBM, they don't do anything cool. All right, I just showed you the smallest computer on the world. So now I'm showing you the most advanced computer on the planet. This picture here behind me is a 50-cubic quantum computer that we actually featured at a conference in February. They actually brought it out. Now, this is not for home use, because you actually need to cool it down to below, really cold. I think it's 256 minus or something like that. It's insane cold. So you can't have it at home, unfortunately. But the research team is working on projects that will allow us as developers to test it out. If you had access to a quantum computer and you had some algorithm in your head that could revolutionize something, wouldn't that be cool to test it out? Did you know that? We have something called QX. You can actually go and try it out. Isn't that awesome? We have about 40,000 researchers working on this globally, and another 250,000 developers poking around on this. What could you do with a computer that will help you think about data and everything else we know in the universe a little bit differently? Did you know this? Did you know that we have this? Some people said no. Yes, we know. IBM has been talking about it. Very cool. Yeah, we do. And that's what we are all about. IBM is a fascinating company. Anyway, so we're getting to the end. A couple of things before we sort of hang up the curtain on this one. There's a booth. We have a booth on level 1. So please, stop by the IBM booth. As you can see, the company is transforming itself. See, no dark suit, no tie, no white shirt. We're as good as it gets. But the company's pursuing transformations at a pace that I don't think anyone else has seen. We are aggressively pursuing research, a lot of cool stuff going on. And by the way, this is just a handful of the stuff that we're working on inside IBM. And there's a ton more. I'm not recruiting. But if you do have an interest in what we're doing, we have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of cool stuff that you guys can test out. So why don't we do this? Why don't you guys, I'll be down at the booth. So if you guys have questions for me, you're more than welcome to come and say hi. Hey, I saw your stuff. I'd like to, find out more. You can come by our booth. And then I think in general for us as developers, I think one of the things I just want to make sure that you guys leave with is that when you see new things, don't hold on to what you knew, because it will hold you back, right? Change will happen whether we like it or not. And I think for us as developers, and we know probably better than most, that when there are changes, you don't want to be left behind, right? Some people will benefit from it, like, you can talk to someone that's doing COBOL development. They're making a killing today, because there are not that many left, right? But if they had moved forward, then of course they would probably not have a job, right? But for the few that are left, it's obviously good. But I think in general, I think this statement from Alan it pretty much reflects everything that we're doing right now inside IBM, right? We are moving fast and aggressively, and we have a lot of cool stuff to show you. All right? Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you guys. Glad to be here. Enjoy, and I'll see you guys down at the booth. Right? Thank you, guys.